Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Wake Up Entrepreneur. This morning, we will be doing the English version of a presentation brought to us by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And my name is Carlos Velez. I am the chairperson for the HBC, the Hispanic Business Council in the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce. And we would not be able to do this morning without the help of the chamber staff. Thank you, Christina, for helping us out this morning and bring this presentation together for us. This morning, we have the honor of being joined by Lonnie Koyama. He is the lead outreach and marketing specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration. And I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about Lonnie. Lonnie is like I said before, the lead outreach and marketing specialist for the U.S. Small Business Administration, or the SBA, in South Florida. He's been with the SBA for now 11 years. His duties involve fostering economic development with business organizations. In addition, he counsels businesses and connects them to resources to help them start and grow. Prior to the work with the federal government, Lonnie had a long private sector career that includes extensive management and supervisory experience with several national retailers over an area encompassing 7 Western states. Lonnie also had a career in the restaurant management and ownership, and his restaurants, El Amigo in Golden, Colorado, is still open after 36 years. Lonnie and his partners opened it. He also served for 4 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, where he was honorably discharged. Lonnie, good morning. And again, thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to help us out with the English version of this very important presentation for us.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you and thanks to the Osceola County Chamber for doing the production of this webinar. So today we're going to be talking about the Small Business Administration's economic aid programs. Most of these are started when COVID-19 first rolled out. We've had several different programs, several modified programs, but it started out with the Economic Injury Disaster Loans and Paycheck Protection Program, and we've had continuous changes, and those changes have gone on, and there's a change that just starts today, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to be talking about that one too. So let's get into this. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking about where we are now. We're going to be talking about the economic aid funding options, loan program details related to the Paycheck Protection Program, and economic injury disaster loans. We're also going to be talking about some grant programs. There are 2 of those: targeted economic injury disaster loan advance, and then the shuttered venue operators grant. And then we're also going to be talking about additional assistance and resources that are out there for you. So first, let's talk about where we are. Congress intended this round of COVID-19 economic aid funding to support the hardest hit small businesses and those in underserved segments, including women, minorities, and veterans. The SBA is committed to ensuring these programs are launched as quickly as possible to deliver critical economic aid to America's small businesses and other eligible entities. So with the first round of PPP, a lot of the loans went to larger entities. When Congress wrote the second round of PPP, and it was approved by the president at the tail end of 2020, this round of PPP is all focused on the smaller businesses that are out there. So, and then the current administration just came out with some new rules. Again, they start today to push it down to the smallest of businesses. So these are the funding options from the SBA related to COVID-19. Going from left to right, on the left side is loan programs. I'm sorry, on the right side, grant programs. So I'm going from left to right. And I'll talk about each of these in detail. But on the far left is the Paycheck Protection Program. The purpose of that program is to help you with payroll and to put people back to work. The second one, debt relief on SBA 7A, 504, and microloans. The SBA is making some loan payments for folks who already have SBA loans, 7A loans, 504 loans, and micro loans. EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loans. That is a loan program which is intended to help you with working capital. There was also a cash advance program as part of that. And so money was initially allocated for that. Then they ran out of funds for the cash advance, but more funds were put into it. So now that's the targeted idle advance. And now to meet the criteria for that, it's a grant. And to meet the criteria, it's you need to be in a specific set of circumstances to qualify. And I'll talk about that. And then on the far right is a shuttered venue operators grant. That's primarily for folks that are involved in entertainment. And as you know, anyone related to entertainment business has been devastated by COVID-19 because there hasn't been any entertainment. And I'll talk about some of the details related to that. So first, let's talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, some of the top takeaways. And primarily, these are changes from that Congress wrote into the new rules, and all of these changes are meant to benefit you. So first, they expanded the PPP eligibility and how funds can be used. A borrower can now select a covered period between 8 and 24 weeks. It used to be, it started out that you had to use the money in 8 weeks, and then it was changed to be 8 or 24 weeks. Now with the new rules, you spend the money anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks, any time frame between 8 and 24 weeks. There's an offer for a second draw PPP loan option for the hardest hit small businesses. So generally speaking, a person can only apply for one PPP loan. However, if you meet a certain criteria, you can apply for a second draw PPP loan. It allows for a deduction of expenses covered with forgiven PPP loan debt on federal taxes. So before it was where some of your expenses, you would have to pay taxes on those. But now, some business expenses, but now with the changes that Congress wrote in, you could not only forgive those expenses and that debt on your PPP loan forgiveness, but you could also write it off on your federal taxes. It updates simplified forgiveness form to include PPP loans up to $150,000, which means 86% of all the PPP loans submitted in the year 2020. So for most of you who've already received a PPP loan, there's a simplified form. It's a one-page form, very easy to fill out, which makes it really easy for you to apply and receive forgiveness. And then at the bottom, it no longer subtracts the idle advance from PPP loan forgiveness amount. So in the past, if you received an economic injury disaster loan cash advance, that amount would have been somewhere between $1,000 and $10,000. It was $1,000 per employee. But if you had received that, you would have had to subtract that from your PPP loan forgiveness. Now that is no longer true. So you do get to keep that. So what is a first draw PPP loan? Again, PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Program. For eligible applicants that did not receive a PPP loan prior to August 9th, 2020. So that's this year. So basically in the year 2021, if you're applying now, the PPP loan eligibility now includes additional types of entities. The covered eligible expenses are expanded. Before it was, and it still is, where you have to spend at least 60% of the expenses on payroll, but there were only 3 other eligible expenses that you could spend it on, but now that list is expanded. Borrowers can set the covered period to use the PPP loan proceeds to be any length between 8 and 24 weeks after disbursement. So basically, you're going to be getting the loan, and almost immediately after you get the loan, you have to start using the loan. Again, the whole purpose of that is to put people back to work and to use the money for payroll. Certain borrowers may request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. To be eligible, you must have been in business by February 15th, 2020. And for the current round of PPP, you must apply on or before March 31st, 2021, or until the appropriations are exhausted. So you've got about 5 weeks left. If you're going to apply for a PPP loan, you have about 5 weeks left to do it. I would not wait. So first draw PPP loan eligibility. You must comply with size standards. What that means is you must be a small business. Eligibility criteria and certain limitations. So newly eligible include housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, and certain 501c6 organizations such as chambers of commerce, and then eligible news organizations. All of these entities I just mentioned were not eligible last year for PPP, but they are now. Those that are still eligible include sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed individuals. Also, business entities such as, for example, partnerships, corporations, and LLCs, 501c3s, nonprofit organizations, 501c19 veterans organizations, and tribal businesses. These are laws that were just announced this week by the new administration, and they go into effect today. So, first, to establish a 14-day exclusive PPP loan application period for businesses and nonprofits with fewer than 20 employees. So starting today and for the next 14 days, they're only going to accept applications from businesses that have less than 20 employees. So the whole purpose of this is to ensure that the smallest of businesses have a chance to get at this money. Other rules that went into effect allow sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals to receive more financial support by revising the PPP's funding formula for these categories of applications. Eliminate an exclusionary restriction on PPP access for small business owners with prior non-fraud felony convictions. So what that means is they're just opening up the pool of PPP applicants. Eliminate PPP access restrictions on small business owners who have struggled to make federal student loan payments by eliminating federal student loan debt delinquency and default as disqualifiers. So in the past, if you had defaulted on a federal student loan, you were not eligible for a PPP loan, but now you can be. And then lastly, ensure access for non-citizens, small business owners who are lawful U.S. residents by clarifying that they may use individual taxpayer ID number or your ITIN to apply for the PPP. Okay, let's talk about a second draw PPP loans. For borrowers that previously received a PPP loan, have 300 employees or less, and suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. For most borrowers, the maximum loan amount of a second draw PPP loan is 2.5 times average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. Again, the purpose of a PPP loan is for payroll, so that's why they use this calculation. For borrowers in the accommodation and food services sector, which is NAICS 72, NAICS stands for North American Industrial Classification Standard. It's an industry code, so everyone out there has a NAICS code and fitting certain industries. But if you're a NAICS code 72, which is for accommodation and food services, the maximum loan amount for the second PPP loan is 3.5 times average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs, up to $2 million. So folks in that particular industry can qualify for a larger loan. Second draw PPP loan applicants must submit the information on SBA form 2483SD, that's the borrower application, when applying to their lender. So the way you're going to apply is you're going to apply through a bank or through a lender or financial institution. You're not going to apply through the SBA. So I get calls all the time from people who said, hey, I found the form, I filled out the form, now I want to give it to you, SBA. But you're not going, it doesn't go through the SBA, it actually goes through a bank. And so you're going to be applying through a bank. The easiest thing to do is look to the bank that you're already doing business with, since most banks out there were doing PPP loans. That's the way to get going on this. If you're getting a second draw loan, the easiest thing to do is go back to the bank where you got your first draw PPP loan, because they have a lot of your information already, and that would simplify the process. Second draw PPP loan eligibility: must have previously received a first draw PPP loan, and the covered periods cannot overlap. So you can't use it for payroll and expenses on overlapping periods. It must be different time frames. Additional eligibility criteria: has used or will use the full first draw PPP loan amount only for eligible expenses before the second draw PPP loan is dispersed. Also, you cannot have more than 300 employees. And lastly, you must demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. So you're going to have to look at your income statements or your P&L, profit and loss statements. Those are the same thing. But you're going to look at quarters, compare quarters from, for example, you would look at the first quarter. I would look at all 4 quarters myself. First quarter of 2019 versus the first quarter of 2020, second quarter of 2019 versus 2020, on and on and on. And to see if there's a 25% reduction in one of those quarters, because there has to be at least a 25% reduction in one of those 4 quarters for you to qualify for a second draw PPP loan. So how does the application process work? First, I talked about this just a minute ago. First, you're going to find a PPP lender. So there's a couple of ways to do that. You could go to our website, sba.gov, and plug in lender match. And if you go to that page, it has 2 different lender matches. One is to find a lender match for a traditional SBA loan. And then at the bottom of the page is to find a lender for a PPP loan. You can also go to this other website, sba.gov /paycheck protection /find. You will plug in your zip code and it'll tell you who are the bankers in your area doing PPP loans. You can also contact one of our resource partners if you go to sba.gov /local assistance. One of the good things about that particular link is it will tell you who is in your area that can help you. For example, maybe you don't know how to figure out your sales and whether your sales were down 25%. So if you go to that link, it will tell you who are resource partners in your area. Our resource partners include entities like SCORE, the Small Business Development Center Network, Women's Business Centers, the Veterans Business Outreach Center, and chambers too. So they're the resources that can help you with this. Number 2, complete your application. So again, you're going to be doing this online. You could print out an application. I was just talking to someone this morning about that. They had printed it out and they were wanting to know who to send it to. But again, you're going to be doing this through a bank. Most of the banks are doing this online. So you're going to be completing the application online on their portal, and it's electronic. So that makes the processing go much faster. You will also include any supporting documentation. So the bank is going to tell you what they want as supporting documentation. So that will be scanned and uploaded to the bank's portal. And then get help from SBA Resource Partner. I was just talking about that. If you need help with some of this, then look to some of our resource partners like the Small Business Development Centers, the SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers. Number 3, SBA issues the loan number. So the lender submits the application electronically to the SBA for compliance check and loan number. At the bottom of the screen, March 31st, 2021, or when appropriate funding is exhausted, is the final deadline for lenders to submit PPP loan applications to the SBA. Don't wait. Last year, people waited until the very last week, which is a big mistake. Don't wait. If you're going to apply, do it now. All right, so PPP loan terms. If the PPP loan is not 100% forgiven. So the goal is to have it 100% forgiven. And if you follow the guidance, then it will be 100% forgiven. But maybe there's some quirk where for some reason that Well, I was talking to a guy yesterday and his business shut down. And so he didn't even use the money for what it was intended. So he has that loan out there to the federal, or it's actually to the bank. It's not to the federal government, it's to the bank. But if the money is not forgiven, PPP loans have a fixed interest rate of 1% that is non-compounding and non-adjustable. There is no requirement for collateral or personal guarantees. There are no fees or prepayment penalties. It has a 5-year maturity. For those before January 5th, 2020, it's 2 years, but borrowers can ask the lender to extend it to 5 years. Payments start once the borrower knows how much of the PPP loan will be forgiven. The lender will notify the borrower. If borrowers do not apply for forgiveness, payments start 10 months after the last day of the covered period. All right. Let's talk about forgiveness. So when I mention forgiveness, what that means is that basically the loan turns into a grant and it's forgiven by the federal government and you don't have to repay the thing. And that should be your goal. So borrowers must apply for PPP loan forgiveness through their lender. The lender submit lender forgiveness decisions to the SBA. Updates per the Economic Aid Act. So these are recent changes in 2021. Idle advances are no longer deducted from the PPP loan forgiveness payment. So I mentioned that earlier. Those were the idle advances were cash advances of $1,000 per employee. And before you had to subtract those amounts from your PPP loan forgiveness, but you no longer do have to subtract those. Expenses paid with PPP loan funds are federally tax deductible. Consult the IRS for details on this or your tax professional. Expanded forgivable expenses are permissible for any unforgiven PPP loan. New simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans of $150,000 and under. Again, that's a one-page form, very simple. You just fill out the form, attest that you used the money the way you were supposed to, and then send that into your bank along with whatever other requirements they have as far as documentation, such as payroll figures and things like that. Per the CARES Act, forgiven PPP loans are not federally taxable income. So that money that you received in forgiveness is not going to be taxed, which is a good thing for you, right? All right. Economic injury disaster loans. Let's talk about this. So we're done with Paycheck Protection Program. Now let's talk about economic injury disaster loans. So this money actually comes from the SBA. This money is not coming through a bank. Provides economic aid to businesses experiencing a temporary loss of revenue due to COVID-19. So the SBA has always done disaster loans, and unfortunately in Florida, because of where we are and because of hurricanes, we've had lots of disaster declarations over the years, and they happen just about every year, and that's usually from a physical disaster. The only other economic injury disaster that I'm aware of was after 9/11, and because the economy went into recession after that, that was an economic injury. And there were economic injury disaster loans at that time, but nowhere near the level that we have right now. So going back to the slides, Economic Aid Act extends the deadline to December 31st, 2021. So it was due to expire December 31st, 2020, but now it's been extended for another year. Use of proceeds, what that means is you can use this loan money for. You can use the loan money for working capital and normal operating expenses, such as continuation of healthcare benefits, rent, utilities, fixed debt payments. So it's not to be used for buying new equipment or marketing or anything like that. Well, actually, marketing could be part of it if that's part of your normal operating expenses. Terms, 3.75% interest for businesses. It's a fixed rate. If you're a nonprofit, the interest rate is 2.75% fixed. The terms are 30 years, and you may wonder, why is this so long? But the whole point is to make it easy for you to pay the loan back. We don't want to clobber you and your working capital. We want to ensure that you can make this payment. There is no prepayment penalty, so you don't have to wait 30 years to pay this thing off. You could pay it off earlier if you want. Loans over $25,000 are secured by a UCC filing. $100 is deducted from the loan proceeds. Eligibility: qualified small businesses, cooperatives, and agricultural enterprises with 500 or fewer employers, or defined as small per SBA.gov size standards. So what that means is that based on your NAICS code, we talked about NAICS codes earlier, but every NAICS code has a size standard that determines whether you're a small business or not. So if you're in services or construction, it's based on it's based on your average revenues over the last 5 years. If you're in manufacturing, it's based on the number of employees. And then what else? Eligibility and private nonprofits. Okay, targeted idle advance. This is not the same as the idle loan. This is actually a grant program, and this is very specialized. So the targeted idle advance, no action is required until you're contacted by the SBA via direct email invite. This is a new program in the Economic Aid Act. It will balance out a previous idle advance to the full $10,000 if the business is, number one, in a low-income community, number two, suffered greater than 30% economic loss, and three, has 300 or fewer employees. Those who applied for an idle advance but didn't receive the funds due to lack of funding will receive a full $10,000 if they meet the same requirements above and per the targeted idle advance funding availability. So for those of you who applied for an idle loan way back when, in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, and maybe you received a part of a advance. So maybe you at that point you would have received $1,000 per employee. This applies to those individuals, to those companies. So if you're one of those companies that received part of a idle cash advance, the SBA is going to be reaching out to you. And the thing is, to qualify for this, to get the full $10,000, you must meet all three of these criteria that are shown in the top there. Your business must be in a low-income community. You must have suffered greater than 30% economic loss, and have 300 or fewer employees. On the bottom, the SBA will reach out to those who may qualify via email with instructions to determine eligibility and submit documentation. So there is no place to go and apply. The SBA is going to automatically reach out to anyone who fit these criteria. And well, they're going to reach out to anyone who fit the criteria of getting less than $10,000 in the cash advance. Those are the people they're going to be reaching out to see if they meet these additional criteria to get the amount up to $10,000. Okay, these are things items needed to verify eligibility and submit. So these are the things the SBA is going to be asking for. Your 2019 federal tax return, recommended to have on hand when applying. Your EIN/Social Security number as specified in the original idle application. Your monthly gross receipts for 2019, 2020, and completed months in 2021. Confirm information in your original idle application is still accurate. Changes may require a manual review and documentation. Applicants that pass the initial eligibility requirements will be required to sign a 4506T for the SBA to obtain tax transcripts before the agency can approve the targeted idle advance. To find out whether you're maybe you meet the criteria, maybe you receive $5,000 and now you know the SBA is going to be reaching out to you to find out whether you're in a low-income community. A low-income community mapping tool is now available to help targeted idle advance applicants determine if their business is in one. The map is on the COVID-19 idle webpage under targeted idle advance. The business address must be in a low-income community to qualify. Not across the street, not cat corner. You must be within the boundaries of that low-income community. This is a great tool for potential applicants to check and see if they meet that eligibility requirement before applying. Only prior applicants will be considered for the targeted idle advance. So again, there is no place for you to go to apply. You've already applied if you're potentially eligible. Yesterday I pulled up a map of Orlando and Kissimmee just to show a general outline of the low-income communities. So all the areas in purple are the low-income communities. So those are census tracts that have been deemed to be low-income communities. There's a link on the bottom there to where to find this map. So what you would do is you would plug in your address. In this case, you can change the size of this map to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to find your specific neighborhood. I just wanted to do a big overview. As you can see, it's a lot. Probably about a third of the area in Orlando and Kissimmee falls into this category. So it's a pretty big area. All right. Application process. Only one submission for each targeted EIDL advance can be made. Carefully review the bank account information. We've had people, too many people who, when they submitted their EIDL application, they put in the wrong bank account information or they transposed numbers. And then it's a real bear to try to get that straightened out. Ensure information submitted is 100% correct. Due to limited targeted EIDL advance funds, the SBA will not be able to make reconsiderations. So dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure you do this right. SBA's goal is to process completed applications within 21 days. Applications may be considered complete may not be considered complete until after the IRS Form 4506T is received. Application questions, there's an email address where you can send questions. I'm sure they're being swamped with questions, so I would not expect a rapid response to that. If you're approved, you will receive an email and ACH, what does that stand for? A deposit to the bank account will be provided. You will receive an email. I'm sure they're going to be asking for banking information. All right, another program that's out there, new program, and this one hasn't rolled out yet, but it should very soon. Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So this is a grants program, one where you apply for the funds, you don't have to pay it back. Applications are not yet open. You will need a sam.gov registration to apply. So the important thing to remember here is if this applies to you, you need to go to sam.gov and get registered in SAM. The thing is, to get registered in sam.gov can take up to a couple of weeks. So you don't want to miss out on this because there's a limited number of funds. And the last thing you want to do is have this thing open up and you haven't even applied to sam.gov. There's a real good chance you may miss out on the funds. So who are the eligible entities? Those include live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations and motion picture theater operators, relevant museum operators, zoos, and aquariums who meet specific criteria, talent representatives. Up to 5 business entities owned by an eligible entity may also meet the eligibility requirements. Plus, you must have been in operation as of February 29th, 2020, and you must be a venue or promoter. You must not have applied for or received a PPP loan after February 27, on or after February 27th, 2020. So what that means basically is if you're going to apply for this, you can't apply for a PPP too. You have to choose which one you're going to do, either Shuttered Venue Operators Grant or a PPP loan. So this is a purpose of this box is to show what you can and cannot apply for together. So looking at the left side, if you apply for a PPP loan going across from left to right, so under the PPP row, first draw PPP borrowers may be eligible to apply for second draw PPP loans. If you applied for a PPP, you may apply for a Shuttered Venue Operators Grant if you received a PPP loan prior to 12/27/2020. However, again, you can't apply for a PPP loan in 2021 and a Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Going across the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and PPP. You may apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan However, the PPP and EIDL can't be used for the same purposes / costs. Next row, shuttered venue operators grant and PPP. So you're not eligible to apply for both a PPP and shuttered venue operator grant. Going across to the far right side, you may apply, if you're a shuttered venue operator grant applicant, you may apply for an EIDL. However, the SVOG and the EIDL can't be used for the same purposes / costs. And then bottom row, COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan and the PPP. You may apply for a PPP and the EIDL and PPP can't be used for the same purposes. And what else? Economic injury disaster loan and shuttered venue grant. You may apply for a shuttered venue grant and an EIDL. They can't be used for the same purposes. And that's about it. So other COVID relief that's out there that Congress and the president signed off at the end of 2020. For any of you who have an SBA 7A loan, these are SBA guaranteed loans through a bank. So SBA 7A loan, a 504 loan, and a micro loan. If any of those were through the SBA, first, the assistance varies based on when the SBA-backed loan was approved and by type of loan. Borrowers do not need to apply for this debt relief. The SBA provides it automatically. Letters have been distributed to eligible borrowers. The sample letter can be found at the sba.gov/coronavirus relief. Contact your lender with debt relief questions. So in the case of this program, the SBA paid up to 6 months of your loan, and which is substantial. And so the SBA wouldn't have written to you directly. They would have just automatically made the loan payments for you. So a lot of folks aren't even aware that this program was out there. And yet many folks had hundreds of thousands of dollars of loan payments paid by the SBA. All right, so these are the things that we talked about today. Again, from left and right, we talked about the Paycheck Protection Program, both the initial program and PPP2, and the eligibility requirements for PPP2. We talked about debt relief on your 7A loan, your 504 and micro loans. Again, that was up to 6 months of debt relief paid for by the SBA. We talked about economic injury disaster loans and how to apply for those. We also talked about the targeted EIDL advance, which is something you cannot apply for. You would have already applied for it. And now it's just a matter of submitting more documentation to qualify for more funds. And then we talked about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is a program that's about to come out. Again, if you're going to do that, do go into sam.gov, get an account in sam.gov. Anyone who's ever going to get paid by the federal government for either contracts or grants has to have an account in sam.gov. So do that today. And what else? Local resources. So these are things to be aware of in your area. The first one is a link to our website, and to get more information from our website. In the middle there, local assistance. So if you go to that link, sba.gov/local assistance, if you plug that in, it will ask you for your zip code, and it will tell you who is in your area, whether it's an SBA office, a small business development center office, a SCORE office, a women's business center office, veterans business outreach center. All of those entities are in Florida, and they're all there to help you. There's a link to our YouTube account. So we've just started uploading lots of videos with information on many different topics to help you as you start and grow your business. Other ways to stay connected. This first link, I encourage everyone that's watching this to sign up at that first link, sba.gov/updates. If you go to that link, it will ask you for your email address. And afterward, you're going to be getting newsletters, news from the SBA on a lot of things going on, rules changes, different programs coming out, webinars, lots of good information coming out of the SBA to help you start and grow your business. There's a link to follow us on Twitter. There's a link to our email address. If you want to send us an email, I encourage you to put lots of content in that email to make it easy to answer the email. Sometimes people send emails and they're just too vague, and then we have to reply that, hey, give me more information. I'm not sure what you're asking for here. So you don't, and rather than have a long back and forth that may take weeks, put lots of content in the email. That way we could forward the email to the appropriate party and you could get a rapid response. And then there's a call, there's a phone number to call to leave messages for us to get back with you. And then there's some links there at the bottom of the screen for many of the things that I talked about today, including coronavirus relief. That's everything I talked about. Link to the Paycheck Protection Program and the rules for the Paycheck Protection Program. And then the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, the frequently asked questions for that particular program. And that's it. So, Carlos.
The first one, what time period should some of the borrowers use to determine the number of employees and payroll costs to calculate their maximum loan amounts?
Okay, so in general, borrowers can calculate their, and this is for the PPP loan amounts. In general, borrowers can calculate their aggregate payroll costs using data from either the previous 12 months or from the 2019 calendar year. An applicant that was not in business from February 15th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019 may use the average monthly payroll costs for the period of January 1st, 2020 through February 29th, 2020.
Got it. And should some of those payments that an eligible borrower made to an independent contractor or a sole proprietor be included in some of those calculations of the eligible borrower's payroll costs?
So this is a very common question. A lot of folks out there have, well, they call them employees, but they're really 1099s. And technically, a 1099 is not an employee. So no, you can't include those payments. Any amounts that an eligible borrower has paid to an independent contractor or sole proprietor should be excluded from the eligible business's payroll costs. However, an independent contractor or sole proprietor will itself be eligible for a loan under the PPP if it satisfies the applicable requirements.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the forgiveness of a PPP loan, that it was going to be basically an 8 or a 24-week period. When does that 8-week or 24 period begin?
So the answer, it's actually now, because the rules changes, it's anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks. But the 8 to 24 week period starts on the date your lender makes a disbursement of the PPP loan to you, the borrower. The lender must disperse the loan no later than 10 calendar days from the date of the loan approval.
Got it. And what periods can I use to determine that 25% reduction in gross receipts?
So this is a question related to PPP2. So this is for people who already received one PPP loan, but now they want to apply for a second PPP. So the answer is the 25% reduction in a quarter is based on a calendar year. And I'm sorry, based on a calendar quarter. Calendar quarters include January to March, April to June, July to September, and October to December. This analysis will help determine if you qualify for a second draw PPP loan.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your information on this. I hope all of the people that are tuning in can benefit from some of these benefits and information on how to get it done. We can't thank you enough, Lonnie, for your time and the thoroughness of this presentation. We hope that you can join us again, in a future time on a different topic, hopefully, to help us give more value to our members. Again, thank you for the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce staff that helped us put this Wake Up Entrepreneur session together. And until next time, thanks again, Lonnie.
Thank you, Carlos. Thanks.
Have a good one.